All right, in this lecture we want to talk about marginal utility per Riyal. Before we do that, we want to review the concept of utility. What is utility? Well, utility is anything that brings us happiness, satisfaction, pleasure, or enjoyment. We must remember three things about utility. The first is that utility is measured in utils. Utils are just for analyzing and comparing. The second is that utility is subjective. It's different for everyone and changes all the time. The third principle is that utility diminishes at the margin, or we also speak about diminishing marginal utility. It simply means that it goes down as you consume more of something. Okay, let's think of an example. If we have some Riyals that we want to spend, what should we spend them on, pizza or Pepsi? Really what we have to think about is the marginal utility that we derive from each one of those products per Riyal that we have to spend for that product. We're really thinking about the marginal utility per Riyal of pizza versus the marginal utility per Riyal of soda or Pepsi. In this table, we illustrate pizza versus Pepsi. The marginal utility is both for the same. We've expressed that in utils, the utility unit. In other words, we would derive the same satisfaction or happiness from either a slice of pizza or a can of Pepsi. But the price for pizza is 5 Riyals, the price for Pepsi is only 2. So the rate, or the marginal utility divided by the price, in this case pizza divided by Riyals, the marginal utility of pizza divided by the price of the pizza slice would be 20 divided by 5 or 4. With Pepsi, it would be 20 divided by 2 or 10. In this case, we would get a much higher return for our Riyal by investing it in a can of pizza, because it's going to give us 10 units of utility per each Riyal that we spend. So let's think about it this way. We also remember that the marginal utility declines, so the first can that we consume would give us 20 units, the second can something less. It would continue to decline and actually go negative if we continued to consume. Note here that if you consume the sixth unit, you would actually have negative marginal utility. We can convert that marginal utility to total utility by just adding those up. So in the first case, we would have 20 units of utility. That would increase to 35. You notice a difference in the height of those two bars would be the marginal utility. Continues to grow until it gets to unit 5. At unit 6, it declines because, remember, the marginal utility per Riyal was actually negative, so our total utility would also decline. So let's think about a little table here, how we would analyze it a little further. Looking at each one of those 6 slices, there's our marginal utility that we derive from each slice. We just sum those up, and that would give us our total utility. Notice first slice we have marginal utility of 20. The total utility would be 20. At the second slice, we gain an additional 16 units of marginal utility, so our total utility after the second slice would be 36, and it would go on down. Notice once again, when we can go from consuming the 5th slice to the 6th slice, our marginal utility is negative, therefore our total utility would also decline. Now, if we were able to take the slice per pizza rate, and let's assume we were being charged 5 Riyals per slice of pizza, we could calculate the marginal utility per Riyal. In the first case, we have 20 marginal utility units. The slice cost is 5, so it would be 20 divided by 5, or 4 units of marginal utility per Riyal. You notice as we go down each one of the marginal utilities, divide that by the price, that gives us a marginal utility per Riyal. All right, does that make sense? You might want to pause here for a moment and just look at this chart to make sure you understand it. We would also look at the total costs that we've accumulated so far. It's just 5, 10, 15, 20. Each time we buy a slice, it costs us 5 Riyals. The thing that we have to remember is that we're striving to reach a point where the equal marginal utility per Riyal is equal. So the spending that we incur for the first item plus the spending on the second item has got to be less than or equal to our budget. So in this case, let's go ahead and look at an example. Once again, we'll look at pizza and Pepsi, and we look at the slices, the marginal utility per slice. There's our total utility. At a rate of 5 Riyals per slice, that would be the marginal utility per Riyal, and that would be our total cost for pizza. Now with Pepsi, we're going to look at each can of Pepsi, the marginal utility that we have from the Pepsi. You notice that is different, slightly different than the rate that we derive from the pizza. There's our total utility. And the next column, at a rate of 2 Riyals per can, that would be the marginal utility per Riyal for consuming Pepsi. And that would be our total costs. So the question is we go to the restaurant, what should we consume? How much and in what order should we consume? Well, the thing to remember is we are trying to look at consuming the unit that gives us the highest marginal utility per Riyal. In this case, we would note that that would be a can of Pepsi. We also, in this case, have a budget of 25 Riyals to spend. So if we begin, we would consume the first can of Pepsi. That would give us 10 units of utility per Riyal, and it would cost us 2 Riyals. So we spent 2 Riyals so far. What would be the next thing that we would want to consume? Once again, what we need to do is just look at our marginal utility columns, marginal utility per Riyals, to see which one's giving us the highest rate. And in this case, it would be a second can of soda, and our budget would go, now our spending would actually be up to 4 Riyals. The next step would be what? If you said it looked like a third can of soda, you would be correct. We're still getting a higher marginal utility per Riyal from consuming another can of soda versus a slice of pizza. And we've spent 6 Riyals so far. Now at this point we have a choice. The next thing we could do is either consume a 4th can of soda, or we could consume our first slice of pizza. The 4th can of soda is going to indicate about 2.5 units of utility per Riyal. In contrast, the first slice of pizza would provide us with 4 units of marginal utility. So we would consume that first slice of pizza, and our cost would be 5 Riyals. Our total cost so far would be 11 Riyals. The next thing that we would consume would be the second slice of pizza, because it's giving us a higher rate per Riyal than the soda is. Now we've spent 16. The next thing that we're going to consume, though, it looks like we're going to go back and consume that 4th can of soda because of the marginal utility per Riyal. And our budget, or what we spent so far, is actually going to go up to 18 Riyals. Now it looks like we're going to go back and consume pizza, and we've spent 23. The last thing that we'll consume is go back. We note that we are still getting a higher rate per Riyal from the soda, so we would consume that last soda, and our budget now has been spent at 25 Riyals. You notice the total utility we're getting from pizza is 46 units. The total utility we got from the Pepsi is 53. So our total looks like about 99 Riyals when we consume both of those. That would be the optimal consumption that we would do. 5 cans of soda, 3 slices of pizza, and we would consume them in the order at which their marginal utility per Riyal was highest. Let's look at another situation where the price drops on pizza from 5 down to 3. Would that change the way that we would consume? We would still, with a 25 Riyal budget, we would still consume the first thing we would consume is a can of soda, which is suggesting, the rate per Riyal is the highest. And then we would consume the second can. The third thing that we would consume would be a slice of pizza. Notice that we've changed our consumption pattern a bit here because the marginal utility per Riyal is actually higher for the first slice of pizza than it would be for the third can of soda. But we then also would consume a second slice of pizza. It's higher than the third can of soda. And then we go back, we look at our budget. We've spent 10 so far. We still have budget left, and we're still getting positive marginal utility. So we're consuming. The next thing we would consume would be another slice of pizza. The next thing that would be highest would be back to soda. And we would then go back to pizza and go back to soda. And then the last thing we would consume is that last slice of pizza, the fifth slice of pizza, and that would actually push our spending to our budget. That's where we would stop. We also note that we would stop there because if we were to spend anything else, either another can of soda or another slice of pizza, that our marginal utility would be negative. So we're actually maximizing our utility, and we have spent all of our budget. Hopefully this makes sense.